This is Chris Isham, Washington Bureau Chief for CBS News, and I'm here as always with Juan Zarate for Flashpoints.
Good to see you, Chris.
Juan, let's begin with the meetings today. They're starting today at the White House, and they move tomorrow to Camp David outside of Washington. The president has invited 6 leaders of the Gulf countries, the Sunni Gulf countries. What's he have in mind here?
Well, the president announced this visit and invited the leaders to come to Camp David to talk about the Iranian deal in particular. But this is more than just a discussion about Iran. We can talk about that, Chris. This is an attempt by the American president to allay concerns of Gulf leaders that there's a shift in American focus and policy, one that has begun to shift toward the advantage of Iran, one that has raised security concerns for the Gulf states. And really, this is a meeting to try to assuage those concerns and for the American president, President Obama, to say to these leaders that the U.S. remains a steadfast ally, that we're not going to allow Iran to extend its hegemony, and that we will guarantee the security that has been so much a part of the security architecture of the Gulf since the Carter years. And so this is really an attempt to allay concerns, but I don't think one meeting will do it.
You know, I was talking to an Arab friend of mine the other day who said it's a little bit like somebody taking a second wife and then trying to reassure the first wife that he hasn't given up on her completely.
Yeah, and that may be an apropos example coming out of the Middle East with some of the monarchy actually having multiple wives. But I think what's interesting here, Chris, is 2 things. The dynamics. You have King Salman, the new king of Saudi Arabia, not attending. And the Saudis have explained this as the king having to stay home, worry about what's happening in Yemen. The Saudis are deeply involved there. That makes sense. But this is a very important meeting, and you have other Gulf leaders attending. And so this is a bit of a signal from the Saudis that they remain displeased with where things stand and with the elements of American security guarantees, especially as the negotiations with Iran continue. The second is that the Arab allies, some of whom are friends of ours that we speak with, have been much more open about their doubts about American security guarantees. You even have the ambassador of the UAE here in Washington saying openly that we now need security guarantees in writing, right? The word of the United States isn't enough to assure us that we're going to have that security. That's pretty significant, and it's dramatic. And that's why I think these dynamics are really interesting to watch, and it'll be interesting to watch what the leaders say coming out of Camp David.
Do you think the president will give any kind of security guarantees of that kind that are actually in writing?
I don't think there's going to be an announcement of a new NATO-like structure, which some have talked about. Certainly the president is going to reassure that these countries have America's backing. He's going to do so forcefully. There may be announcements or movements of new weapons systems or these kinds of things that are often symbolic and emblematic of that kind of support. But I don't see anything sort of new coming out in terms of a NATO-like structure. What we are going to see, though, is the president try to convince these allies that the deal that is being negotiated with Iran come June 30th really is in U.S. interest and in their interest. It's going to be a hard sell because these countries see Iran on the rise, they see Iran expanding its influence, and they see Iran's proxies threatening their regimes, whether it's in Yemen, Bahrain, Syria, Lebanon, or even in the eastern provinces of Saudi Arabia. And so this is a hard sell for the American president. And as you said, it's a matter of trying to convince our longtime allies that our new negotiations with Iran won't cause a fundamental rift or shift.
So all in all, we see like this process will be continued. There'll be continue to be discussion and probably still quite a bit of debate about the role of the Iran talks and where this goes from there.
Yeah, and I think the details of the Iran negotiations actually will matter quite a bit. What are the restrictions on the Iranians? Will the sanctions be unwound in toto, or will they come in phases? Will there be verification regimes that are more stringent than what we've heard? And to a certain extent, this is really important for one of the issues that we've worried about in the Iran context, which is, does an Iran nuclear deal lead to proliferation in the Middle East? Do the Saudis, do the Egyptians, do other countries in the region now feel that they have to develop their own nuclear program because they don't feel security from the U.S. and they certainly see the threat from Iran? That's why this kind of a meeting becomes important post June 30th.
Okay, well, important questions we'll be watching over the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
And that's it for Flashpoints. We'll see you next time.